Hello everybody, hi, this is Tommy Tsunami coming to you from High Touch High Tech in New Jersey. Hello everyone, it's time for another science experiment. Today's science experiment is about density. What does the word density mean? Well, it means how much stuff you could cram into a particular volume or a particular size container. So we're going to use this today as our container. This is a quarter cup measuring cup. And we're going to see how different liquids can have different densities. So density is also not only related to volume or how much, what the size of your container, it's also related to the mass or the weight of that matter, those particular small particles that make up whatever we're using, okay? So everything is made out of matter. And matter does matter, that's for sure. And matter contains molecules or small particles, and we're going to look at the difference in the mass or the weight of that particular different types of matter or different types of liquid in this case. So we're going to do what's called a density tower. We're going to use this jar. You could use any type of tall glass or anything that you can see through clearly, but it's got to be big enough to hold at least a quart of liquid. So let's get started with our density tower. So we're going to start with the heaviest liquids, and we're going to put them on and see what happens as we put other liquids on top of them. So the first liquid we're going to add is corn syrup. Okay, corn syrup, or if you have honey at home, you could use honey instead of corn syrup. But I'm using corn syrup for this. And here we go. We're going to add this quarter cup of corn syrup to our density jar. Fill it up just under the top here with the line. And that's great. Going to put this in here. Let that go in. Corn syrup, as you can see, is quite thick. So it's going to take a little while for this to go in there, but I'll give it a little time to go. And the corn syrup is on the bottom now, and then we're going to add our next liquid. Our next liquid is maple syrup, okay? And if you have any type of pancake syrup or maple syrup, we use this as our next liquid, okay? So we're going to use another measuring cup here. Same size, same volume, okay? Put a quarter cup of maple syrup in here. And there it goes, all right? So let's take a look at our density tower so far. See that the maple syrup has gone in there, but let's give it a little time. It's separating. The maple syrup is going to be a little bit lighter than the corn syrup, but you're going to see a line a little more clearly after this gives it time to separate, okay? Let's give this a minute here. And let's add our next liquid. This is also something I'm sure you have at home. I'm going to add some milk. Okay, so add a kind of the same volume, quarter cup of milk. Okay, put this over here. First the milk. It works better if you could pour it slowly down the side, but it's kind of hard to do that. I spilled a little bit. So what happens is, oh, look at that. We can see the milk on top of the maple syrup there and on top of the corn syrup. It takes a little bit of time when you will see the liquids layers start to separate even more as we go along. Okay, so what's our next layer, you ask? Well, let's try to get some dish soap. Some dish soap that I'm sure you also have this at home. Let's add a quarter cup of that. Pour this in here first to measure it so we get the same volume of each layer.
Do you want to color it?
No, next one. Yeah. Next one we're going to color, okay? So the dish soap we're going to put in. Going to add that. Oh, nice. It goes right on top of that. Okay, so what is our next? Well, we're going down to the top. We're going to add same amount of water, but the water we want to color so we can make sure that we see it very clearly. So I'm adding blue color to this water here. 1 or 2 drops would be fine. Mix it up really good. Nice blue water we have here. And then we add the water to the soap, which is on top of the milk, which is on top of the maple syrup, which is on top of the corn syrup. Let's add that water here. And you can see some of it starts to mix in with that, but then it starts to separate out. You start to see the layers become a lot more clear and distinct as they separate from each other. By pouring it in, it mixes a little bit, but then it starts to separate out. Okay, we have one more layer to add here, folks. We are going to add a layer of vegetable oil, okay? Now the interesting thing about this is vegetable oil is a different material than water, of course. And it's also different properties of water. Let's add a little green color to this, make it a little darker so we see it more clearly. Mix it up with this. So let's talk about this here. I did this on purpose to show you that when we add color to oil, it doesn't really mix, okay? See that the color in it? That's because food coloring is water-based, and oil and water do not like each other. Well, oil and water separate from each other because water and oil have different properties, and oil doesn't like water molecules. Water molecules like to stick together and bond really tight, but oil and water molecules like to push each other apart and stand apart. So the food coloring won't mix with the oil because it's not like the oil. It's not different. But when we put this on top of the water, we see that the oil and water are starting to separate here a little bit, and the food coloring went down into the water, and it's going to mix with that. So we have lots of different layers here. So it takes a little time for them to separate, so you leave it really still on a table or so for a little while, and you'll see the layers start separating. The early layers that we put the corn syrup on the bottom and the maple syrup on top of that, now I've separated out really nicely. When we started, they were a little bit mixed, but now they separate out really nicely. And the other layers will start separating out over a little bit of time as you do this. So here's what we did. We looked at different properties of matter. We used the same volume, so we had the same amount of liquid going in, but because each of these liquids are different, they have different molecules in them, different small particles, they all have different density. So each liquid has its own density. The corn syrup was heavier, more dense than the maple syrup, which was more dense than the milk, which was more dense than the soap, and which was more dense than the water. And the oil was the least dense, the least dense of all the liquids, so it stays on top. Now it's starting to spread out a little more. So guys, I really hope you enjoyed this lesson on density. And you could take different materials in your house and see which ones are more dense or less dense than each other by adding the same amount of volume, and see which one separates out on top of the other one. So remember, more dense will sink, less dense will be on top of, will float, or be on top of that more dense liquid. So thank you very much, guys, for joining us at High Touch High Tech, and please have fun with these science experiments. Thank you.